Yeah. So I'll be talking to you today on signs of fair data, and this is coming from Bodan, Africa and Asia. I am also a lecturer in the Department of. So talking about myself now, this slide is especially dedicated to all the women out there, AI enthusiasts, machine learning enthusiasts, and students or aspirants. One, I'm just going to talk about myself. One, I'm a computer science lecturer, and I'm committed to my work. I'm a machine learning researcher. That's the only thing I do day in, day out, morning, afternoon. I'm also married and have 4 children. 2 of them are adults already. And one beautiful thing there is that uh, I'm also the country lead of Bodan Africa and Asia. I represent Nigeria and the Northern Africa. This is what my talk is going to be based on. And this my talk also aligns with the theme of PyCon 2020 on sustainable development. And most importantly, I'm also the country ambassador for women in AI. I represent them. It's actually a relatively small community of women in AI, aspirants, enthusiasts, and most importantly, I'm a very positive person to the core, to a fault, and I'm very passionate about what I do. I research machine learning, I'm a computer science lecturer, and I just don't take too much at a time. I only take a little at a time so that I can excel at what I do. And I'm a teacher, I'm a mother, I'm also a preacher. What do I preach? I preach AI. Anytime I come into contact with you, I just want to turn you to AI person. And most importantly, I also preach about God too. Now, some of my work recently, I'm working on some traditional artifacts, trying to formulate them to machine learning problems. I also work on multi-level data of psychosis diseases. Then curation of multidimensional data set. Actually, I highlighted this in red because it's something that is phenomenal. You know, with this COVID-19 pandemic, nobody prepared for it. So we did is myself and my group, Bodan Africa and Asia, that's the Nigerian team, as part of our contribution to flattening out COVID-19 pandemic. Then we also developed some models and compare on active cases, both at micro and at major levels. And presently, we are working on curriculum development for data steward competency. I'm going to explain all of this as time goes on. Now, what am I talking about? The crisis of COVID-19, what it brought to us is convergence of different kinds of science all over. One, it brought fears, disruptions, opportunities, challenges, and so many host of other things that COVID-19 brought. And it also brought convergence of different kinds of sciences like natural biosciences on testing of diseases, vaccines, treatments. Then it also communication sciences where we have information, misinformation, disinformation coming here and then disrupting the healthcare world. Then we also brought about the social science where we support and counsel ourselves on how to manage the pandemic cases. But most importantly, where it concerns us is the data science. Of course, we realize that there's lack of data or scarcity of data. Then some models that were long forgotten, we could see their relevance to scheme of things. And we also saw that there is need for science to play a role based on data that are trustworthy. Data is what I'm based on here. Then a different kind of science is what I'm going to preach to you today. That this science asks questions on how do we provide access to critical data across locations? Because data is very, very important in all that we do. and in every aspect of our lives. Then how do we ensure that data is official? How do we ensure its governance? How do we protect data ownership? And how do we ensure that all COVID-19 data remains fair? I'm going to define fair. So we envisage that post-COVID-19 is going to actually integrate biosciences into every other science. Then it's also going to bring realization that how do we prepare the entire world for future outbreak. We are going to get answers to most of these questions as I go on. So I'm going to talk about the science of fair data. So the critical points for Africans now is that most data that we work on, especially data scientists, that they are too westernized. And one of my professors told me that when he was studying cancer in UK for his PhD, he argued with his professor that that the kind of cancer that the Western world has is actually different from African cancer. But they didn't believe him until he came back home and collected some sample cancer cases. So we were able to compare and see that the kind of cancers that we have is a little bit different. So that means that the data that we have around or that we work with, they are too westernized and doesn't have any African content in it at all. We need to make African, we need to be resourceful, make African a huge resource of verified data. So how do we ensure data ownership and handling? So that we want African data to reside in Africa, and the ownership of data should be Africans too. So the African data will be property of the country of jurisdiction. So what do I mean by that? That means that data that is collected in Nigeria becomes the property of Nigeria. Then we also want to strengthen data-informed systems for Africa. Then capacity building also. Capacity building. Now, what does Vodan Africa and Asia, what do they stand? Where do they stand, or what do they stand to gain here? That's African inclusion. We want to fight against COVID-19. And in Vodan Africa, we also build capacity through data stewardship. Who is a data steward? They curate data, they manage data, they govern data, data provenance. In short, data stewards, they are data lords. They take care of our data. And we also want to create a fair data science and AI curriculum and learning ontologies. So, so far for Vodan Africa and Asia, we already have fair data points created across Africa. So we are in the process of making all African data fair. No, so what is Vodan? This virus outbreak data network, and is actually designed by GoFair Foundation Implementation Network. So it was set up to fight COVID-19 pandemic, and the implementation of Vodan is to establish the Internet of Fair Data and Services. So what is fair data? Set of guiding principles to ensure that data are shared in a way that enhances reuse. Please capture that word, reuse. That data can be reusable by human and machine. So these are the guiding principles of FAIR. One, you create a metadata. What is metadata? Is data about data. So information about your data, where it was collected, reason it was collected, and some of the characteristics of the data. Then your data should also be assigned a unique and a persistent identifier. So what we mean by that is a host of us will have seen that from time to time, like DOI that is attached to data when you pick them from repositories. Then your data should be rich in metadata, and they should be clearly and explicitly include the identifier as it is unique. Then they should be registered or indexed. Like they can be indexed in popular repositories like Figshare, like Mendeley, and host of other repositories. Then accessible. Yes, that's why I put that a big key there. Then we need data that can be retrievable according to some standardized protocol, such that like now we have COVID-19. We didn't know anything about COVID-19 when it came about. But during research, we were made to understand that COVID-19 belongs to the pneumonia family, and pneumonia family is hierarchical in nature. So, but unfortunately, we don't even have any pneumonia data to be able to propel this new pandemic. So we need to make our data accessible. And during the accessibility, they should be open and they should be free. They should be open and they should be free. And you also grant authentication and authorization to the data. The interoperable, we need to make our data interoperable. Like if you collect COVID-19 data here in Nigeria, also collect COVID-19 data in the same format in Ghana. We should be able to bring this data together, and machine learning algorithms can visit this data and model them out. We can even make comparison between what happens here in Nigeria and what happens in Ghana. Then we create vocabularies, and we also get a qualified reference to metadata. The key word here is metadata. Then reusability of data. Now, past pandemic that the pandemic that happened in the past. Unfortunately, we don't have data. We don't have the data, and we don't even have access to such data. This is something that is pathetic, because it limits even the health worker, even the government, on how to plan for this present pandemic, because it took the whole world by surprise. So that was why there were lockdowns for so many days that paralyzed our social, political, and economic activity. So summarily, what the fair data principle, what it means is that you have to make your data findable by describing the metadata and giving them an identifier, a persistent one like DOI. Then you make your data accessible. Accessibility, you can who to share your data with, and your the access status. That means the level of authorization that you want to give. You know, sometimes some live data, like data about human being, you can't release it to just anybody, because if you release and they analyze and they misinterpret results, it affects the whole world. Then reusability, we grant rights and licenses. Like if I have the data now, it depends on the level of my sharing, common share. Like I can allow you to use my data, or I can say that I don't want you to use my data for commercial purpose, or that you can use it for another research, as long as you cite me. You know, those kind of permission that you give to people that want to use your data. So this is the image of everything that I just talked about. And this fair, what do we stand to gain if you collect data and make your data fair? That it helps peers and your future self to understand the research projects and data. And you can also facilitate data sharing and collaboration. You can work with your other colleagues in another country that they experience the kind of pandemic that we work. You can collaborate and and bring common knowledge to the table. Then you can also increase the visibility of research and can lead to more citation. So the summary of it all is that you maximize the potential from data assets. You also maximize your research impact. And this is a three-way verification framework where you can make your data fair. You create a metadata for machine. You also have to create a fair implementation profile and create a fair data point. Actually, for the fair data point, we don't encourage individuals to do that, but we have bodies that can they create this fair data point. You can also log your data with them. And fortunately, okay, this is a verification process. The layman example, that once you retrieve your non-fair data, maybe the data you collect freshly from the field, you can analyze the data. By this analysis, as I state, I mean, you can look at the data, what missing data and what other information are you missing from it. Then you can define your model, you link your data up, and you assign a license. what I mean by this license is the level of accessibility that you want to give to people. Then you deploy your fair data resource. And the beautiful thing there now is that we have 2 FDPs installed in Nigeria. You can actually log your data there. One is by the largest AI community in Nigeria, that's Data Science Nigeria. We have 1 FDP with them. And the second is Ibrahim Badamosi University in Apai in Lokoja, in Niger State, sorry, in Niger State. So that's where we have the second FDP. They actually have data protection laws, so you can log your data with them to make your data fair. Now, this is an example of how a fair data looks like. So this is the fair data point for Data Science Nigeria. So they already have 2 data logged there already, and they have more. So when you make your data fair, see the data, metadata, the version of your work, the language, and the license. So the license granted to this data means that that CC by NC NG 3.0 is that you can actually use data for your research. You can add or you can manipulate, but you have to cite the owner of the data. So now, before I move further, this Vodan Africa, because I'm coming here on the platform of the Women in AI, the global coordinator for Vodan is Professor Mirjam van Racing. She's a professor of computing at Leiden University in the Netherlands. She's a woman. She's a global coordinator. And the executive coordinator for Africa is Professor Francisca Oladipo. She's a professor of computing also at Federal University of Lokoja, there at Niger State also. And I myself am the country lead for Vodan African Nigerian team, and I also lecture at Obafisi Olobado University at Boewoye. So my conclusion now is that amidst all this fear and anxiety and unhappiness and so many other things, another opportunity has been created for the science of fair data, and we take it seriously as much as we take the science of medicine. Because we all know that medicine has to do with life. So also is data. Everybody deals with data. Everybody needs data to work. So this science of fair data is as important as science of medicine. Why it is important to find vaccines, especially for this pandemic, because it's still very fresh in our memory. It is also important to provide healthcare workers with right data to combat it. If you don't have the right data, the right clinical data, hospital data, or maybe health record, or good health records, they can't function well. And if the data is not even put in the right format, they cannot use it well. So fair data is as important as our life itself. So, and we also said that it's a set of principles for developing a robust, extensible infrastructure which facilitates discovery of course, findability, access, and reuse of research data and software. Now, we have created fair data, fair software. We are even moving to fair models for machine learning researchers like myself. So putting COVID-19, putting computing right at the center of the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. So these are my references, and I want to thank you for spending some time with me. Thank you very much.